Welcome to Peak Selects. Before modern tanks, missiles, fighter jets, and machine guns, armies had to win wars with weapons made from wood, bronze, iron, rope, fire, and engineering. But ancient and medieval warfare was not primitive. Some weapons were so powerful that they could break city walls. Some could burn ships at sea. Some could destroy enemy formations before soldiers even reached close combat. And some were so terrifying that their psychological effect was almost as important as the damage they caused. In this video, we are counting down the top 10 most powerful ancient weapons. This list is not only about size. It is about battlefield impact, destructive power, fear factor, and historical importance. And at number 1, we will look at a weapon that helped change the fate of one of the most famous cities in world history. Let's begin. Number 10. At number 10, we have one of the simplest weapons in history, the sling. At first, it does not look powerful. It is just a small pouch connected to two cords. A soldier places a stone or lead bullet inside, spins it, and releases one cord to launch the projectile. But in the hands of a trained warrior, the sling was deadly. A skilled slinger could throw stones at high speed with surprising accuracy. These projectiles could break bones, crack skulls, and seriously injure lightly armored soldiers. The sling was also cheap and easy to supply. Unlike arrows, sling stones could be found almost anywhere. That made it useful for armies that needed large numbers of ranged fighters without expensive equipment. Ancient slingers were often used before close combat began. They could weaken enemy lines, disturb formations, and force soldiers to raise their shields before the main attack. Its greatest strength was that it looked simple, but it was not harmless. A small stone, launched with enough speed, could become a battlefield weapon. That is why the sling earns its place on this list. Number 9. At number 9, we have the composite bow. This was not an ordinary wooden bow. A composite bow was made from different materials, usually wood, horn, and sinew. This design allowed it to store more energy while staying smaller than many simple bows. That made it especially useful for mounted warriors. A horse archer with a composite bow could move quickly, fire arrows from a distance, retreat, turn, and attack again. This made him extremely difficult to fight. Heavy infantry could not easily catch them. Slow armies could not easily force them into close combat. The composite bow gave ancient armies speed, range, and flexibility. It was used by many powerful warrior cultures across Eurasia and the Middle East. In open terrain, armies with skilled horse archers could dominate enemies who were slower and less mobile. The power of the composite bow was not only in the arrow. It was in the way it changed the battlefield. It allowed warriors to attack without being touched. And in ancient warfare, that was a major advantage. At number 8, we have the war chariot. Before cavalry became dominant, the chariot was one of the most powerful weapons of speed and shock. A war chariot usually carried a driver and a warrior. The warrior could use a bow, spear, or javelins while the driver controlled the horses. In open terrain, chariots were dangerous because they combined movement, height, and psychological pressure. Imagine standing in an ancient army formation and seeing horses charging toward you, wheels tearing across the ground, and warriors firing arrows from a moving platform. That sight alone could create fear. Civilizations such as the Egyptians, Hittites, Assyrians, and others used chariots as elite battlefield weapons. They were not perfect. Chariots needed flat and open ground. Rough terrain, mud, rocks, and hills could make them ineffective. But when used correctly, they were powerful. At number 7, we have the scythe chariot. This weapon took the idea of the normal war chariot and made it more terrifying. A scythe chariot had sharp blades attached to its wheels or axle. As the horses charged forward, the blades were meant to cut through enemy soldiers and break formations apart. Its main purpose was shock. The scythe chariot was designed to make soldiers panic. If an enemy formation broke apart, even for a few seconds, that could decide a battle. Ancient armies depended heavily on discipline and formation. Once soldiers lost order, they became vulnerable. But this weapon also had weaknesses. If the enemy stayed calm, opened gaps, or attacked the horses, the chariot could fail. It needed open ground and the right timing. Still, its fear factor was real. The scythe chariot was not only built to kill, it was built to terrify. And in ancient warfare, fear was a weapon. At number 6, we have the battering ram. The idea was simple: take a massive wooden beam and smash it repeatedly against a gate or wall until something breaks. But simple does not mean weak. The battering ram was one of the most important siege weapons in history. Early versions could be carried by soldiers. More advanced versions were placed inside a covered structure to protect the attackers from arrows, stones, and fire. The front of the ram was often reinforced with metal, giving it more impact against wooden gates and defensive structures. Its target was usually the most vulnerable part of a city, the gate. Walls could be tall, towers could be strong, but every fortress needed an entrance. And that entrance was always a weakness. The battering ram used weight, repetition, and manpower to turn a strong gate into broken wood. It was not elegant, it was not fast, but it worked, and once the gate was broken, the battle could change instantly. At number 5, we have the siege tower. A siege tower was not a weapon like a sword or a bow. But in a siege, it could be one of the most dangerous tools an army had. City walls were designed to keep attackers out. The siege tower helped attackers reach the top of those walls. These towers were large wooden structures, sometimes several stories tall. Soldiers could move inside them while being protected from arrows and projectiles. When the tower reached the wall, attackers could cross from the tower onto the battlements and fight defenders directly. This was a major threat. Instead of only trying to break the wall, an army could climb over it. The siege tower forced defenders to react quickly. They had to burn it, stop it, or destroy it before it reached the wall. If they failed, enemy soldiers could suddenly appear at the top of the defenses. The siege tower was slow and vulnerable to fire, but its battlefield impact was serious. It turned height into an offensive weapon. At number 4, we have the ballista. The ballista was basically an ancient artillery weapon. It looked like a giant crossbow, but instead of using simple bow tension, it used twisted cords to store energy. When released, that energy could launch large bolts, darts, or stones with great force. The ballista was especially known for accuracy. Unlike some siege engines that threw projectiles in a high arc, the ballista could fire more directly at enemy troops, walls, ships, or siege equipment. A large bolt from a ballista could tear through shields and armor. Against packed formations, it could cause serious damage. The Romans used ballistae in sieges, defensive positions, and sometimes in field warfare. This weapon showed that ancient armies were not only using brute strength. They were using engineering. The ballista turned mathematics, mechanics, and stored energy into battlefield destruction. It was not the biggest weapon on this list, but it was precise, powerful, and feared. At number 3, we have the trebuchet. The trebuchet was one of the most powerful siege engines before the full rise of gunpowder artillery. Unlike torsion weapons such as the ballista, the trebuchet used leverage. Later versions used counterweights to launch heavy projectiles over long distances. Its purpose was clear: destroy walls, crush buildings, and break the will of defenders. A trebuchet could throw massive stones, burning projectiles, or other heavy objects into a fortified city. It did not need to destroy everything in one shot. Its power came from repeated bombardment. Every impact damaged walls, buildings, and morale. For people inside a besieged city, a trebuchet was terrifying. Even behind strong walls, they were not truly safe. The trebuchet was also a symbol of organized siege warfare. Building and operating one required planning, materials, skilled workers, and trained crews. It was slow, large, and difficult to move. But when used correctly, it could decide the outcome of a siege. The trebuchet proved that even the strongest walls could be challenged by engineering. At number 2, we have Greek fire. Greek fire was one of the most feared incendiary weapons in history. It was used by the Byzantine Empire, especially in naval warfare. The exact formula is still not fully known, which makes it even more mysterious. Historical accounts describe it as a burning substance that could be thrown in containers or projected from tubes. It was especially terrifying because it was difficult to extinguish, particularly at sea. Against wooden ships, Greek fire was devastating. Ancient ships were filled with wood, ropes, sails, oil, supplies, and men packed closely together. Fire was one of the worst possible threats. Greek fire turned naval combat into a nightmare. Imagine being trapped on a wooden ship while flames spread across the deck and water does not easily save you. That is why its psychological effect was so powerful. Greek fire was not just a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of panic. It helped the Byzantine Empire defend itself in critical moments and became one of the most legendary secret weapons in military history. Its mystery, fear factor, and battlefield impact make it worthy of the second place. At number 1, we have the Sahi cannon, also known as the Ottoman Great Bombard. This was not just a large cannon. It was a symbol of a new era in warfare. During the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, Sultan Mehmed II used massive artillery against one of the strongest defensive systems in the world, the walls of Constantinople. For centuries, these walls had protected the city from powerful armies. Many enemies had tried to take Constantinople. Most had failed. The city's defenses were legendary. But the Ottoman army brought something that earlier armies did not have in the same way: giant gunpowder artillery. The Sahi cannon was one of the most famous examples of this new siege power. It was enormous, extremely heavy, and built to fire massive stone projectiles against the city walls. It was not easy to use. It was slow to load. It was difficult to transport. It required skilled engineers, trained crews, and serious organization. But when it fired, it delivered something that older siege weapons could not match in the same way: explosive psychological force and direct wall-breaking power. The sound alone would have been terrifying. Imagine standing behind walls that had protected your city for generations, then hearing the ground shake as giant cannonballs smashed into stone again and again. That was not just an attack. That was a message. The old age of walls and castles was beginning to change. The Shahi cannon did not win the conquest alone. No single weapon does that. The conquest of Constantinople was the result of strategy, manpower, naval moves, logistics, leadership, and constant pressure. But the cannon played a major role in weakening the walls and showing that even the strongest medieval defenses could be broken by gunpowder artillery. That is why the Shahi cannon takes the #1 spot. The sling could kill soldiers. The ballista could pierce armor. The trebuchet could smash walls. Greek fire could burn ships. But the Shahi cannon helped mark a turning point in world history. It was massive, terrifying, and historically important. It did not just attack a city. It helped end an era. Ancient and medieval weapons were more than tools of violence. They were products of engineering, strategy, fear, and human creativity. Some were simple, like the sling. Some were fast, like the composite bow. Some were terrifying, like Greek fire. Some were massive, like the trebuchet. And some changed history, like the Shahi cannon. Before modern warfare, armies already understood one important truth: power was not only about the soldier holding the weapon. Power was also about range, fear, technology, and the ability to break what the enemy thought was unbreakable. Which ancient weapon do you think was the most powerful? Write your answer in the comments. Thanks for watching Peak Selects. Subscribe for more videos like this.